All right. Let's start the share. Cool. All right, so first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to create the front end first. And it's going to be very simple. Not going to do much styling, if any at all. So let's just begin by doing that. First step, cd ... and I'm going to go to my dev folder. And then I'm going to make a new directory for this project. So we will call this form front end. And then I'll cd into there. Cd means change directory. mkdir is make directory, in case you were wondering. So I'm going to cd into form front end. Go into that directory. And I am now in the form front end directory. So I'm going to make a file. So I'm going to say touch index.html. Now, touch, what it does is it just creates an empty file. So do that. If I type ls, this will list the contents of the directory that I'm in. You can see that it created that index.html file when I did touch index.html. So I'm going to do some more. I'm going to create a couple more files. I want to have a server file. So make directory, touch index.js. I'll call this one server.js, and then I'll make an index.js as well for our scripts. So the server.js, this is going to just be our server that serves the client their files. And these are just going to be the files that they only have access to. This isn't going to be the backend server. This is going to be like a front end server. So index.js and that, yeah. And then I'm going to make a directory called public. And then inside of this public folder, I'm going to have a directory for our cascading style sheets and style.css. Okay, now let's back out of here. Oop. And if I type code with just a period and press enter, it'll open the directory that I'm in. So as you can see here over on the left hand side, we are now inside of that folder that we created for the front end. And so I'm going to get started by just creating a basic server to serve the front end files. So we have our index.html, and that's the file that I want to serve. I need to start off by installing Express using npm. So npm I stands for install. So Express, and that's all we're going to need for this part. Hey, Adam. If you have any questions at any point, stop me and let me know.
All right, Tony. Thank you. Good morning or good afternoon.
Yeah, good morning to you too. Okay, so I just installed Express so I can serve files on the front end. And the way that you import that into your server.js file, you create a constant with Express as the name, require Express, and that will import the library that I just installed down here using npm space I space express. And then I'll create another constant app, and I'll create a new instance of Express. And then down here to initialize it and make our server start, it's app.listen and then the port. So you can see right here it says port number and then our callbacks. So I'll just do port 3000 and then an arrow function for our callback. And I will log that the server has started on port 3000. Okay, and now I need to create a route. So when someone just puts in localhost 3000, I want them to be served a file. I want them to be served index.html in particular. And so to set up that route, they're going to be making a GET request. That's what browsers do when you type in a URL. That's a GET request. So we're just going to do it for the root directory. So let me open up my browser here. New window. And I'll bring that over here for us. So when someone types in localhost 3000 and presses enter, see it says cannot get that. So we're going to create a get method. So for the root. So request and response, and we're going to pass that into a function. So we're going to make a response. So res.send file. And what this will do is it'll send a file within this directory right here that we created for this project. And in this case, I want to send the index.html file. And let's just semicolon there, and let's test it out, see if it works. Even though, actually, let me put some dummy stuff into the HTML file. So let's just put a title. Actually, let's call it form, because this is just for form data, because I want to show how to send data from the front end to the back end. And we'll create a form. And the action, at this point, I don't need to fill this in yet, but later on it's going to be like /submit. Actually, it's going to be a different port. So the backend server I'm going to put on port 8000. That's not set up yet, but I'm going to do localhost 8000 and then just do submit. And that'll be the route that I create later on. And so within the form, I'll just put I'll put two fields. I'll put a field for name and then a field for email. And we want to give these names. That's one of the attributes we need to give it in order for us to receive the data on the back end to the API. So name, and then we can go do another label for email and add in the inputs. Okay, and I'm going to put in some break lines here too, just to make it look a little neater. And then, of course, the last thing we need for the form, we need a submit button. So I'll go down here to button submit. See, type submit, and we'll put in just some text that says submit. And now we just need to start our server. So we wrote this right here, and the way we wrote it, it should send the index.html file when we go to the root directory of localhost 3000. And let's do that. So node server.js. Uh-oh. Let's see here. Unhandled error event at that. Okay, this is totally unrelated. You can see listen address already in use. This is my fault. Sometimes when I leave my code editor open too long and I close it, it won't end the node processes that I had running. So let's end these node processes. And then I should be able to start up my server. I'm used to this error. Okay, server started on port 3000, so I had no errors at all. Let's refresh this. Path must be absolute or specify root. So the problem here is that I did not specify the directory name before this. I have to concatenate that with index.html. Okay, what did I do wrong now? Oh, okay, now I have to restart the server. So usually, now to install nodemon, now this is going to be a useful tool for later. I'll show you why. So npm space I space nodemon -g. Now if you do -g, it installs it globally. And nodemon, what it does is it monitors your files that you're editing, and when you save a change, it'll automatically restart your server. So I had made those code changes, but what happened is it didn't restart the server, and therefore this problem never got fixed. So clean exit, waiting for changes before restart. Let's get rid of this. I don't think I need to include that now. Oh, it started the wrong. See right here. Where is it? Node index.js. That is not the one we want started. So it was starting this one. If I go into, I'm in the root directory right now, so I'm going to do npm and init. And that's fine, that's fine. Entry point, I'm going to do server.js. And so npm init, what this does is it creates a package.json file. And when I run nodemon, this package.json file right here that I created, it should automatically tell nodemon what the first file is that should be ran, and it did not. So I'll just do nodemon and then the name of my file that I want watched and started. So now my server started. Okay, and now I do have to go back here and add the directory name in front of it. And it restarted that. And there we go. So that's a little bit of error handling. It happens. So now we have our form being created in HTML, or served, I should say. It doesn't do anything right now. And that's something that we are about to change, because at the moment it's sending to localhost 8000, which is not running. So I'm going to create a new window here for my editor so that we can go and create our backend. And I'm going to open up the terminal and cd to my dev folder, and I'll make a new directory for the backend, and I'll just call this form backend, and cd into that, and create our server JSON file, or JavaScript file, not JSON. And then I will npm init and go through this process, and it's pointing at my server.js file automatically. Great. And then I can do code dot, and that will open up that project in a new window. So I can close this empty one right here. And now, so what we need for this one, so because what's going to happen on this API backend is I want to receive the request from this form here via a route, a post route, and then I want to, with Mongoose, store that data into a Mongoose database. So I need Mongoose and I need Express. And that's all I'll need right now because I'm not going to be doing any encryption or anything like that yet. That can be for the next one. Okay, so we now have our node modules folder that appeared. If we look in there, we can see all the different dependencies that come with Express and Mongoose. And if we go up here, we can see that there's Mongoose right there. And we can see that we also have Express right here. We will never have to touch the node modules folder or anything inside of it. We can now import those two packages into our server.js folder or file by creating a constant. It's going to be the same as how we did it before and require Express. And then I will also do Mongoose and require Mongoose. Okay, and then I need to create my instance of Express by doing app equals Express again, just like I did in the first one. And then down here, this will start our app. And this time we're going to do it on port 8000. Arrow function to log that the server has started successfully on port 8000. Okay, so now I want to create a Mongoose connection. And the way I'll do that is I'm going to make a database URL variable that I'm going to then pass on to a different function. So the URL for that in particular is local, actually it's MongoDB / localhost, and then the port number for my instance is 27017. And then after this, you do a slash, and then you specify your database name right here. So in this case, I'll just do form DB. That sounds good. So now in order to connect to our database, it's Mongoose. And you see that this up here lit up. That means that that's now being used. And then right here, we can see all the different methods that we can use with this. And right here, you'll see that there's a connect option. If I open our bracket, we see that it takes a URIS string and options, and then a callback for handling errors. And so first things first, it's asking for the URL for the database. And then I'm going to specify some options here. It's not required, but there will be some errors here. Actually, I'll leave that open for now, or I won't fill that in yet. And then later on, when those errors come up, I'll show you how to resolve them by adding those Mongoose options in. And so I did an arrow function for the callback, and then inside of the callback, if there's no error, I'll pass an error into here. And if there is no error, so the exclamation point says no error, that means that I can continue on. Actually, I'm going to check if there's an error. And then I'll return a message if there's an error. And return just means that if there is an error in here, it'll return and exit out of this function here. So that means it won't so these lines of code, they go in order. So we got this return console.log. And then, if I didn't have the return, it would then go down here and then, do this next console.log that says Mongoose is connected. But if there's an error, we don't want it to go on to this next line. So that's why I'm returning, so that it bypasses all this and exits this function. Okay, so let's run this, known mon. Okay, so it does say down here, server started on port 8000 and Mongoose is connected. So Mongoose is successfully connected, but you can see right here, there's some depreciation warnings. It says current URL string parser is depreciated. Use the new URL new parser. And that's where it says, pass these options. And that's what I wanted to do in these curly brackets. So these curly brackets denote an object, and this object is the options object for Mongoose. And in here, we will do the use new URL parser, set that to true, and then use unified topology to true, because those are depreciated and we need to use the new ones. And now we successfully have our database started. And so the next thing I want to do is I want to create a route. So over here where's the other one? This one right here. On our front end, we have our home route, our root directory route, that's serving up this index.html with this form in it. And if we look at this index.html, we can see that the action is pointing at localhost 8000-submit/submit. And we need to set the method to post. Post means that it's sending data. Get means it's trying to retrieve data. So in this case, we're trying to send data to the backend, and we're not trying to get anything from them. And so let's save that. And now over here in our backend, let's create a post route. And to do that, it's app.post. And in this case, the route that we're trying to create is the //submit. And then we'll have our request and response sent into this arrow function. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to print the data that we receive from the form. And that's it. I just want to print it to the console. So I'll just do console.log. And then the request. We got this request and then a response. Well, the front end is sending a request. So, and the request is going to, inside of the request is going to be my object that contains that name and email. So the way that you get access to that, it's request.body. And body is where that data from the form is going to be located. But there's one more step involved in this, and that's that we need to set our router to use URL extended or encoded. And what this is when form data is sent via post request, it's encoded. And we need to tell Express that it needs to use this encoding format to decode it. Otherwise, we won't be able to look at our data that is being sent. And in here, we need to set it to extended. Okay. And console.log that, yep. Send. Why is it doing that? It shouldn't say XDG open. There's something going on. Okay, let's look over here. Action. I think I need to put the HTTP in front of it. And let's make sure that this is totally up-to-date code by restarting it. Okay. Action, yes. Button, submit, yes. Let's open up one of my other projects here that I just had. I'm going to open up my jQuery sandbox. See, I did okay. /submit. And then over here, for some reason, this new front end doesn't want to send it. So I got to figure that out. And open folder. I'm on the back end. Window. /submit, and method is post. Good. And send file. Okay. There we go. I don't know what just changed, but I guess sometimes you just got to clear it and restart it. Because I didn't change anything except for this HTTP aspect. So now I'm not having that weird pop-up for xdg-open, which is for Zoom. I'm not sure why it thought my post request was a Zoom request. But anyways, so now it's just hanging. You can see that it's continuously just loading, waiting for localhost. But if I go over here to my backend, you can see that on the console, I did receive that data. So I now have this object. You can see that it's in curly braces. That means it's an object. It has two value key pairs. So I have a value of name or a key name and the value of my first name and last name. And then I have a key for email and then the value for email. And so now I'll be able to work with that. Next step is going to be to actually create a model, a data model for Mongoose. So when I want to have a user, let's create a user model. Let's do mongoose.model. And then inside here we can define what that object is, the object model. So we're going to have a name, and inside of this object for name, we're able to describe exactly what kind of data we're going to put into the name field. So it's going to be a string, and we can make it so that it's required. And then also another useful thing to have here is trim. And what trim will do is if for some reason when someone's over here on the form and then they put a bunch of spaces before and after their name, trim will take away those spaces and get rid of that excess space. And then we're going to do another field right here for email. And that's also going to be a string. And later on in another tutorial, I can show how to do a validation for email. There's a middleware that you can add into Express that will do some advanced checking to verify that it is indeed an email you're entering. But for this, we'll just do required, and we'll do the same things that we did for name with the trim in required. Uh-oh. I believe I need to do. It's probably asking for a name. Yes, it was. Okay, so before you define your user object here, you have to put in the name of the model right here. And that was just my mistake. That's why this is practice. Okay, so now we have our user model, and we should be able to create a new user. Let's go back here to our localhost 3000. And then, so in here, we now have access to the request body with that form data that we sent earlier. So up here. So we can send any data we want through here, name and email, and we'll receive it in this function body. So let's do something with it. We're going to create a user. And this will be a new user. And right here, we can just put the rec.body, so the request body. And so what that will do, because if you remember up here, when we printed the request body, it was already an object with a name and email field, exactly how we just defined it in this Mongoose model. So we can just pass this request body, dot body, which is this object, into the new user function, and we don't have to manually type in, like assign the value to the keys. This will automatically just insert that in there. So we now have that, and next order of business is to just save it, like so. And I'm not gonna go into this too much, but I'm gonna add async here in front of the anonymous arrow function, and then down here, I'm gonna put await. And all this does is this code right here is asynchronous, which means it takes time for it to process. And if I make this into an asynchronous function, it returns promises. So this right here, and this is something that requires a lot more explanation than what I'm giving it now. So essentially, if I was to go like this, like if I put another function after this command right here, this right here would probably fire off and be executed before this is finished. So what await does is it makes it so that it doesn't move past this line until this is done. That way, if you have another function or something down here that requires that this be done first, it will wait for that to be done. And that's just a way of preventing like really weird behavior later on that you don't want. And that should be all that we need. So but I do want to respond. So I will do res.send. How do I want to do this? I'll just send a response, a status response of 200. And 201. 201 means created. And then I will send, I'm not sure how to do this actually. Because I have this server running separately, because this one is port 3000. How do I redirect them back to the other server? Or what do I send back? I'll just do the status for now and see how that goes. Troubleshooting, right? This is kind of, so I'm used to just working on these backend APIs and saving things to databases. And it was just today that I was like, I want to learn how to create the front end client and make it communicate. with each other. I'm not sure how, because I can send a response. Let's just try it. So I say I went down here, I did status of 201, and I'm sending that. Now, what's going to happen? That's the real question. Submit. Okay, so yeah. I'm basically just on a blank page now for the submit. Um, I don't see any errors or anything. That's good. Oh, I needed to do something else. So I have this await right here, but what happens if there's an error? So I need to set that up. So I'm going to do try. I'm going to put this command inside try. So it's going to try to save it, but then it's also going to catch errors. And we don't want this to be sent if there's an error. So we're going to put that after the save is done. And under the catch, we're going to do a res.status, and we'll just send a status of 500, which means server error. And we'll send that with the error itself. And let's try this again. Just, whoops, let's go back and submit that. I didn't receive any error, it looks like, so that's good. And now I'm going to go into Robo 3T. And Robo 3T is just a really nice way of going into your Mongoose databases and checking out what's in there. So I have my form DB, it was created. Go into collections, and I see that there's a users collections with 2 user objects in it. So that means that this code is working. And I now have 2 different users. Sweet. Now, after it submits, how do I redirect them, though? That's a good question. Express send. I'm going to go look at some documentation. And I'm using Express 4, so this will be it. API reference. And response. Dot send. I wonder, can I just send a URL? Because if I could do that, send URL. Redirect to an external URL. This is probably not the way to do it. Res.redirect. Okay. That looks like the way to do it. Okay, so I'm on the back end right now, so that means that I can take this one, and instead of doing the res.status, I do want to do I still want to send a 201. but maybe I can do a 201 and a redirect. Chain them together. And we want to go back to localhost 3000, just the root. Let's try it out. And it didn't hang, and it looks like it refreshed. And so let's go into Robo 3T and refresh this collection here. And whoa, Control R. And it sent, so that seems to have worked. I was able to send the user data. I sent a status 201 to let them know that the user was stored in the database, and then I redirected them back. I redirected them to a URL on their front end server. So they never landed on the back end. That's good. That was the first time I've ever done that. Cool. Well, that's all I had for you guys today. I just wanted to give a brief demonstration of how to set that up.
Oh, I'm late.
Hey, what's up, Gus?
I just saw your notice.
Well, I'll be posting this. It's
Okay.
full of mistakes, but I did
Good.
call it a practice.
Yeah. I wanted to see you used Express.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Okay, cool.
All
I'll
I
watch
did
the
in
replay.
this one is I set up 2 Express servers. I set one up here. This is my back end, and then I'll bring this up. And this is my front end server. So this simple front end server, all it did was when people made a request for the root directory, I sent a response, and the response was to send a file, an index.html file with a very simple form on it, name, email, and submit button. And then in that index.html file I sent, the form has an action for localhost 8000, which is where I put the backend, and that makes a post request. And
the backend is a REST API, is that right?
Yes. And then over here, I set up my backend API on port 8000, and then I set up down here, I made a route for that post request to /submit. And all that did is it got that form data, and then it stores it inside of a Mongoose model right here, object model. And right here, it creates that new user, and then right here, it saved it to the database, and then it redirects the user back to the front end. That's about it.
Awesome. It's so much easier than working with Spring. I can tell you that.
It's amazingly easy. I've never worked with Spring, so I can't say, but I've worked with like the Apache servers and stuff like that, and it doesn't even compare.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I'll get that post, and if you want to check it out.
Yeah, I'll watch for the post. Thanks.
Cool. All right. Thank you guys for showing up, and see you later.
Thanks, Tony.